You don't just want it to be kind of a 30-second blurb of, hey kids, here's the alphabet, now let's get back to our wild, silly prank adventure. You want using that skill to be what's helping the characters solve their problems.
Do you have hacks or tips for parents how to maybe find a way to good content?
It is a really difficult situation, and I think
Claire Christensen, a leading expert in early childhood education and media. She has uncovered surprising truths about screen time's impact on kids.
As a senior education researcher at SRI International, she evaluates media that help young children learn in various subjects, including STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math.
they have limited time. Their child uses a tablet or, uses technology, and parents cannot possibly screen every individual video their child watches. There are 500 hours of content uploaded to YouTube every minute. YouTubers are trying to keep children watching. That's far too much for parents to be screening.
How we educate our children in the next 5 to 10 years will change in the combination with new technologies and especially education technology.
I think some parents feel maybe overwhelmed, ashamed, guilty, some kind of negative emotion about the amount of time their child might spend on a tablet.
Should parents stop or try to block kids from access of technologies?
I would.
Talking about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. One of the main topics also where you are focused on. We are recognizing that in the next 8 years there is a big opportunity from a job and career point of view in across the world. So I think jobs in STM are growing 4 times faster than non-STM jobs. At the same time, we know that by 2025 there is a forecast telling us that only in the United States of America there is a gap of 2 million jobs unfilled in that direction. So is this already a call to action for parents? Hey, you should definitely start doing something in that direction with your kids, educating them. And to add a couple of side questions, is there something like a too early age? And is there already something like it would be maybe too late to start now?
Those are amazing questions, and what a fascinating fact. Thank you for raising it. Obviously, there's no time when it's too early to start getting your child interested in STEM. But at the same time, you want to follow your child's interests, especially in very early childhood. Children are so naturally curious, and they're going to learn the most from whatever's compelling to them. They may have interests that you might not even think are STEM yet, but are actually preparing them for all kinds of science, technology, and math learning. Things like looking at bugs through a magnifying glass. Things like seeing what sinks and floats in the tub. All of those kinds of activities where you follow your child's curiosity can really help to prepare them for STEM careers.
Oh, that's something fantastic and something that I would immediately subscribe as a quote. Talking about, we will come to the STEM jobs, and thank you for giving me the clarification to call it STEM jobs. I think I said STEM. Maybe this is the European way of saying it. So,
yeah, maybe.
But before we kick off and go deeper into this, because I think this is also one of the main topics for today, I would love to segue back to yourself. So, long story short, when I take a look into your career, it's a fascinating mix between education, research, media, and technology, not to forget. So can you maybe tell me, how did this journey start? I don't think that you've been sound like a young girl from Illinois saying, okay, I want to get into that direction. So what was the initial motivation and trigger that opened this long journey of so many years for yourself?
Really, when I think about my career, I'm trying to pay back a favor. When I was a very young child, I was a very anxious person. And at that time in my life, the grown-ups, my parents, my teachers, weren't talking that much about really difficult, big feelings like anxiety. And the place where I got the most information about how to handle my feelings was a TV show. It was Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It gave me such comfort to think about what Mr. Rogers said about how to handle our feelings and how we can feel better. And ever since then, really, I have been on a quest to pay that favor back, because I know that there are children all across the world who are getting things from media that they may not be getting in other contexts in their lives, or media may be supporting their learning in ways that are very important to them. So really, I've been on a quest to improve kids' media, to make it as good as it can be for each of those individual kids and for my former child self. To dig a little deeper in that, I started out wanting to be in television production. I wrote a kids' TV show pilot. I have a bachelor's degree in television production. Ultimately determined that, maybe that wasn't a pathway for me. My aesthetic skills are not quite as strong as they would need to be. So instead, I wanted to be like Mr. Rogers in a different way. I wanted to know what was good to include in kids' media and technology. So I got a PhD in community and prevention research, where I really focused on evaluating educational programs. I did things like interning at a children's museum, which was fantastic. And from there, I've worked at SRI ever since. We're a nonprofit research and development organization where I have the enormous privilege of helping the developers of children's media and ed tech to both improve and evaluate their products.
Sounds fantastic. I think that we also had something similar in Germany. It was not Mr. Rogers, but Peter Lustig was the name of the guy who was also educating kids to so many different things, which is an interesting side question, which was not planned officially, but I think it's worth it to ask it. If you take a look into your childhood and the media experience that you had, and maybe I had also, I think I can also speak for everyone in Europe, with all the different languages, that we all had similar formats. How do you think the change happened? I mean, is there a change in the last 30 years of media, and Is it something like a positive or a negative trend? How do you see it? If we talk about free media, like in our time as kids, television, I think nowadays it's not television, it's mostly things like YouTube. What changed from your point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. I can say subjectively, kids' media certainly seems different. And objectively, speaking from my research, the big change that I can speak to is this shift to kids watching videos more on YouTube than in any other context. Young children watch a great deal of YouTube videos these days, and those videos are categorically different from the television that many of us grew up with. The television we watched as children was created by studios and followed certain conventions. It had characters, it had plot, it often had education advisors if we were lucky. Children's media that's on YouTube varies very widely in quality because much of it is user submitted. And I'm sure we all have our favorite kids media user submissions that are wonderful and of very high quality, but then there's a lot that can be of much more mixed quality or can have strengths and weaknesses that are quite different from what we grew up with. It's a time of really rapid change in what kids are watching and using.
Mm-hmm. Just something that I recognize for myself as a parent, or also a reason for me to start my own path and developing something like an alternative to video for kids in that time. There are a lot of studies around the world that are talking about, let's call it like this, the impacts on the child development, mental development of kids when it comes to video. One thing that very often is communicated by experts is that the video structure has changed rapidly, so that they are overloaded with much more quicker cuts, more music, more effects, to keep the kids hyper engaged. This is something like the terminology that is used in this context. So keeping them hyper engaged, somehow addicted to the video. If I think now about, the Disney classics that I watched, where we had a lot of, smooth situations, a lot of music and calming down in between scenarios. Do you think that this trend is something parents should be aware of? Or maybe even, try to be aware of it, to change something in the consumption behavior of the kid?
Yeah, Nevio, I think you've narrowed in on an important feature of kids' media, which is the pace and the degree of stimulation. And you're absolutely right. There has been some research published showing that it's possible that when kids watch faster paced media, they may have more difficulty regulating themselves afterwards. However, critics of this field of research have pointed to some important limitations in how those studies were conducted. Whether the videos that were shown to the two groups were truly comparable, whether they differed on other characteristics. One study even found that it might be not so much the pace of the videos, but realism versus fantastical content that might lead kids to react very differently after watching the videos. So I think that at this point, there isn't enough research to say for certain, steer your child away from anything fast-paced. I think there's enough research to say, if you're noticing that your child is having an undesirable reaction after engaging with media, there could be something to that. And you might want to try encouraging them to use different media, maybe slower paced media, maybe less fantastical media. Try varying that and see how your child reacts.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Was this also part of the researches that you supported back then? As far as I know, you participated in two quite significant evaluations and researches in that direction. So was this part of it? And also to connect this to the STEM topic that we had in the beginning. So how relevant, so what are the key insights that you found out during these kind of researches in the connection to STEM-related jobs? And maybe something like, as I said, the duty of parents to start early enough to maybe qualify if there is something in that direction for their kids that they could maybe stimulate further, or just to start any kind of stimulation in the direction and to be more open-eyed to that thing in general, to just detect these early skills to continue, harvesting and growing them. I don't know how to call it. Let's keep it like that.
So I have conducted evaluations of media developed by PBS, which stands for, or stood for in the past, Public Broadcasting Service, which is the United States' public media system. PBS Kids makes educational videos for kids. And I'm lucky enough to partner with colleagues at EDC, the Education Development Center. My colleagues and I at SRI partner with them to evaluate PBS Kids media as part of the Ready to Learn program funded by the U.S. Department of Education and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And some of the recent evaluations that we've done really speak to some of those skills that you're talking about, teaching kids future-ready skills. So we did one evaluation of a show called Molly of Denali, which is about a girl named Molly who lives in Denali in Alaska. And it teaches informational text literacy. This may be a foreign term to some, but it's skills that we as adults use every day and that kids are really curious and fascinated to learn. It's skills to take useful information, to learn information from text. And that might not be reading a book, although it could be reading a nonfiction book. It could be learning to read a map or a train schedule. It could be learning to read a menu. It's all kinds of ways that we use information and text to solve problems in our lives. And that show teaches informational text. So we did one study looking at whether children can learn informational text skills from engaging with the show, games, and hands-on activities. I can talk more about that, but the headline finding there is that kids can, which is very exciting. And then another skill that's very important is computational thinking. So computational thinking is kind of the habits of mind that underlie coding. It's a skill that kids can learn quite early, even before they might learn formal coding. And we did an evaluation of a PBS Kids show called Work It Out Wombats, in which 3 wombat siblings use computational thinking skills like breaking down a problem, debugging a problem, putting events in sequence to solve problems in their neighborhood. We actually just wrapped that study recently. And again, spoiler, I can talk more about it, but we found that even young children can take valuable sequencing skills from public media designed to promote those skills.
Fantastic. It sounds so interesting. I'm so curious to learn more about what you did. It's great to see how long and how deep you went from a professional career point of view to become an expert in the direction, and what kind of creative approaches you already tried out to get there. So one thing that I heard out, which I would like to take as some like the bridging way into the next topic, is technology. So technology is definitely one of the main let's call it speedboats to bring us to the next island as a civilization. Let's talk in pictures. I like to talk in pictures, just by the way. And one thing that is connected to this is definitely the impact. So we are not doing, I mean, humans are always trying to improve things. Technology is one of the quickest developing thing in the world right now, and we always can connect technology to an impact. So one area that was also relevant for you all the last years was the focus on education technology. So tools in that direction. So how can we improve educational processes for kids with technology, with technology and tools? So I love that direction as well. As you know, I'm also entrepreneur in that direction, and there is even something interesting that I found out in the history of humanity. So I think all of us heard about Plato. I just recently started to learn more about him and his work as a philosopher from the Greeks. Also by a technology tool. So I'm using currently an application from Germany, which is super famous because it helps adults to learn these kind of historical things and things about art, philosophy, etc. on a very easy way in some like 15 minutes brackets. And there I started learning about Plato. And Plato was also telling a lot of things about children, which is quite interesting. So first of all, he said, there is a lot of truth in wine and in children, something that I like. Nothing that we will discuss today. And said is, I'm not sure if I can give it word by word, but I think it was connected to that the story is the way to learn. So it sounds like story-based learning, so that you can teach children a lot by just finding a way how to change the way you get the information to kids. So now coming back to EdTech and all your experience, how do you think that the entire industry, but also the entire way how we educate our children in the next 5 to 10 years will change in the combination with new technologies and especially education technology?
Well, I'd love to comment first on that anecdote about Plato, because that's a piece that my research speaks to as well. The idea that children learn from story. You've been talking about, how kids' media has changed and the importance of story. Some of the work that we do here at SRI is developing an AI algorithm that can process kids' YouTube videos to understand their content. And as part of that work, we review a vast number of YouTube videos as part of training our machine learning model. And one thing we have learned in that process that's really surprised me is how many of these videos are not narrative. One thing that we're all probably used to is having narratives in our kids' television. The friends have to fight the monster, Mr. Rogers goes on a visit, whatever it might be. I think that there's a real difference in the narrative structure in YouTube videos that young children are watching these days. And I think that's something that we really want to be watching, paying attention to, and researching the extent to which kids are learning from those videos. But then more broadly, you asked about the future of EdTech for kids. One movement that I'm excited about is the idea of using technology to make teaching and parenting easier. I don't ever want to use AI to replace a teacher or a parent. There is too much value in human interaction and connection. That's what nourishes us. But oh my goodness, it is hard to be a parent, and I'm sure it is very hard to be a teacher. And especially in ways that involve technology, wading through all the available technological resources that are out there, all the videos your kid might watch, etc. So I'm very excited to see different projects and products that will make those things easier so that parents and educators can more readily support children.
Yeah, I totally agree. Coming to one thing that you also mentioned now, when it came to the research that you made on the YouTube videos and the narrative that you found there, is there I don't know how long this research is doing its process, or how old the data is. I mean, there are a lot of channels, millions of channels getting created every week, every month. I don't know the exact numbers, but I can assume that it's a lot of new channels and a lot of new content just getting out every day. So also probably quite hard to just keep on top of what is happening. But if you take something like a researching window of 10 years, are there something like specific patterns in or clusters of narratives that you recognize? And are there even things that you found personally concerning? I will give you a story why I'm asking this question. So when I started my venture and my journey to develop something like a solution where I was saying, okay, this is something that I would support as a parent myself, I just recognized, I have 3 kids at home, different age groups, and YouTube is something like the free thing that you can give every child. And there is a lot of great content, but there is also a lot of stuff that they can detect themselves when they start exploring it, and the journey goes in all directions. And I also recognize quite heavily, especially when I got my first kid going to school, where it's interacting more with, let's say, 15, 20 other kids from the same age group, and then coming with new information home and telling, hey, I have new friends, and all of them are watching channel A or channel B and C. And then I started, okay, can I see what they watch, and what are you watching together? And there have been a lot of these channels where I said, okay, this is something that I would not really support as a parent, because for me it created something like the wrong narrative, where I would say, for example, things like something like financial wealthiness have been put in front of two young kids. I don't know, kids that are getting picked up by their parents at school with huge expensive cars, that have thousands of super expensive toys in the kids' room and playing an infinitive amount of stuff all the day. Well, I said, okay, I'm not sure if this is creating something like the right picture for these 2 young minds, and if this is the right focus that they should be focused on, getting picked up by big cars and having a lot of toys. So this is the story I have, and that's why I want to ask you the question. Have you recognized something like patterns in the narratives and things that are concerning?
I think your anecdote points perfectly to a trend that research has found in children's YouTube videos, which is very prominent: consumerism. That's among the types of harmful content that researchers have been finding when they look at the YouTube videos that kids watch. And when we've spoken with parents, they've described really a wide range. You're talking about, kind of very ostentatious displays of wealth, but it could also be things as simple as kids making a milkshake out of many, many kinds of candy, which might not be appropriate for children to see in families where maybe food is more scarce, more precious, where we don't use food in those ways. And I have heard from parents in our conversations that they feel torn. They feel like, well, my child enjoys it. This relaxes them. Their friends enjoy it. It's fun for them. But at the same time, I would say, it's important that the characters that your child is watching display the kind of values you'd want your child to have. If you wouldn't want your child to act like those characters, then you might want to encourage them to expand their horizons in terms of what they're watching, because kids really do identify with the folks they're watching.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Have you recognized any kind of specific differences between, let's call it geographies? So based on the research you did, is there a specific pattern that you see maybe in the United States in comparison to Europe, or maybe even going further into East? Because to be totally frank, I'm living in Germany, so we have some like the Western direction to see, okay, what are some like trends from the Western part of the world and what is happening in the East, like Eastern Europe. And I very often have the feeling that Eastern European media and content is more focused on putting these kind of STEM-related narratives into trends and making these things attractive and cool again, in comparison than Western media, where, again, this consumerism, what you mentioned, is very often becoming something like a main role in a lot of the content. Have you found similar research results?
No, I haven't looked at geographic trends. We've looked at English content broadly, but I can say that I do think that there might be significant trends in terms of the source of the media, right? YouTubers are trying to keep children watching so that they can sell the ads that are placed on their videos, and they may be including sensational, eye-catching content to do so, whereas folks who are creating media for other sources, such as for television or maybe for a paid site, might be more focused on educating kids than on keeping their eyeballs glued to the screen, depending on the site or source.
Okay, yeah. So, Claire, when we talked about STEM jobs and the role of media, there is also one relevant topic next to the impact in general, which is the impact on the social and emotional level of kids. So how do you see the effect on the development of kids in this direction as on the first place? And as an additional question to the same topic, which role would you give parents here? So should we be just the inspiration to guide them in a good way, or should we maybe even feel a kind of a duty to go in a more controlling kind of role and to decide even what our kids should consume? It's a tricky one, and that's why I would like to position it down.
Yeah, absolutely. First, I can start off by saying there's been decades and decades of research showing that kids can learn social emotional skills, positive social emotional traits from watching media that demonstrate those skills, whether it's positive attitudes towards others, whether it's cooperation, sharing, friendliness. All of these things can be taught by exposure to kids' media that teach those skills. So it is very possible for kids to benefit socially and emotionally from engaging with media. But of course, there's always a question for parents of how do you choose media that will promote those skills, and how much should you be guiding or pushing your child? And, I think to the latter question of how much guidance, it really depends on your child's age. When your child is quite young, they're going to rely on you to some extent to help them find media and to select what comes next after a given episode. And I think that's where you can lay the groundwork by choosing, again, primarily I would choose characters who behave how I want my child to behave. But in addition, I can give some other guidelines. So you want to make sure when you're choosing media that you want to teach your child anything, but including social emotional skills. You want to choose media where your child likes the characters, where they can identify with the characters. You want to make sure that it's teaching something that's relevant and interesting to your child. You don't want it to teach them how to, use a coffee maker when your child isn't drinking coffee, for example. You want it to be something that's of interest to them. They might be interested in how does the garbage truck work? What is the garbage collector's rounds like? Something like that is going to be really of interest, and your child will really soak it up. You also want to make sure that whatever the skill you're trying to teach your child, whether it's social, emotional, or STEM, is part of the storyline. You don't just want it to be kind of a 30-second blurb of, hey kids, here's the alphabet, now let's get back to our wild, silly prank adventure. You want using that skill to be what's helping the characters solve their problems. And then extra credit if the video is kind of demonstrating that lesson more than once and in different ways. So all of those are things that you can be looking out for. And I think it's especially, easy or important to look out for those when your child is quite young. As they get older, you do want to allow your child freedom to explore some of their own interests, right? You can't be trapping them with Barney or, whatever other sanitized kids show you liked when they were a preschooler forever. But at the same time, I think we still want to be looking out for some of those same things. Are the characters behaving in the way I would want my child to behave? And if not, instead of banning the show, which you might have to do in extreme circumstances, but most of the time, you could instead use it to inspire conversation with your child about what your family's values are and how your child might handle situations differently than the characters.
Okay, that's interesting. But this also means that it's a big part of the parents. So finding, let's call it the right productive content somehow, which is also one of the big challenges that I recognized on myself back then. So as I said, I got 3 times of that, 3 times going through the full process of having a kid, a toddler, then a young one, and then growing them up older and older, and also the variety of content. And in a nutshell, I think in general, the world of parents has changed demographically. Just taking a look into the numbers, I think today we have the highest density of double income households worldwide since World War II. Yeah. So more parents, moms and dads together are working in minimum full-time jobs than in the last 80 years. And at the same time, just if we take a look into how screen time has developed, we also know that just based on Apple's screen time report, I think the last one from 2023, we saw that there was an increase in the last 5 years of 350%. Of course, there was a big trigger called COVID back then.
Yes.
But screen time has definitely skyrocketed, and the trend is still there. One of the things that many people see is that video is something like the very dominant entertainment mainstream for kids.
Yes.
Even if social media is a big part, but even social media is now fully dominated by video content more and more. So I think for parents nowadays, it can become very tricky, and it can also become very time consuming. And we all know that I think even this lack of time because of the job situation is the reason why we have this high number of screen time. So else there would be much more human interaction in a family picture. So if now this digital content consumption thing is also becoming time consuming, I'm afraid that more and more kids will just segue into these kind of unhealthy consumption patterns again. So do you have hacks or tips or tricks, I don't know, for parents, how to maybe find a way to good content and how to prepare maybe your kids to engage with this content, maybe even on a self-serve level, so that they early enough start understanding, hey, this is what I should do or I should not do. I don't know. Give us your opinion here.
Yes, absolutely. I think the facts you shared really speak to the squeeze that parents are feeling. They have limited time. Their child uses a tablet or, uses technology because it is constructive for their family in some way, right? Like there are good reasons why families are using technology, and parents cannot possibly screen every individual video their child watches. There are 500 hours of content uploaded to YouTube every minute. That's far too much for parents to be screening. It is a really difficult situation. And I think we can think about this from a few perspectives. One is to put pressure on technology companies to make it easier for parents to identify the kinds of content that they would like their child to watch. For example, YouTube Kids exists, which works for some families and not for others. But at the same time, YouTube Kids is not a perfect situation either. It contains many unboxing videos, which are essentially long ads. I think that there is a space for independent researchers or external companies to come up with other solutions, which is why my team is developing an AI algorithm that can automatically detect early literacy and math educational videos for parents to show their children, trying to help parents make that process a bit smoother. So there's the tech side, right? We need tech development that keeps pace with parents' problems. At the same time, for parents, you're in it right now. You've got to choose the next video for your kid. What can you do? One thing you can turn to are review sites. For example, Common Sense Media is very popular with parents in the US. Another thing to think about is the format of kids' media. There's been a little bit of research showing, for example, that kids have an easier time stepping away from media when you're done with screen time if they're watching long form, by which I mean episodes, rather than short form or YouTube videos. So you might want to think about using some television programs, some studio-generated content to balance out what your child might be watching on YouTube. And then you want to think ahead, right? I think some parents feel maybe overwhelmed, ashamed, guilty, some kind of negative emotion about the amount of time their child might spend on a tablet. And to that, I would say, get proactive, right? If you know your kid's going to be using that tablet for half an hour every night while you make dinner, get your hands on that tablet at a different time and set up some basic protections. For example, make sure it's logged into a YouTube account and block or unfollow the channels that you don't like your child watching. You can also change the settings within YouTube to show the same content less often so that your child might get a wider variety, might find other things they like besides content that you don't enjoy.
Yeah, that sounds very good. I will fully support everything that you said now, especially about the call to action. So it's on us. We need to take action here. One thing in general, what is interesting now, when we talk about screen time and media, a lot of what we discussed today was directly connected to video again.
Yeah.
There are also a lot of studies that are showing us, especially in Europe, there is something that is called the PISA study about reading skills of children If you take a comparison of the last years of the PISA study, you will just see that there is I would say it's a rapid decline. So, I mean, we're talking about, let's say, 5 or 6 years, and we see a rapid decline of reading skills in specific age groups. My hypothesis here, without now having any kind of facts from studies, but this is my personal hypothesis. I think if how screen time wrapped up, and we now know that 90% of screen time is spent with video consumption. Within the same period, we have a decline in reading skills. I think because video consumption is not really requiring any kind of skills. So you don't need a skill to watch a video. You just need to watch. If you want to read, you need at least to have the skill of I need to know reading, which I think right now is not the case for 95% of kids under 7. So only 5% of kids under 7 years are able to read, which means that for this entire age group, the easiest way of entertainment and education for parents is the video format. But how relevant, from your point of view, would also be the focus from the technology industry and external providers to build up something here? To come up with smart solutions to make reading also a part of the young entertainment world again.
Yeah, absolutely. There is very strong evidence showing that high quality educational media, whether it's apps or videos, can promote early literacy. And I think that there are many high quality children's television programs and apps that do promote those skills. Obviously, parents have a wide variety of apps to choose from, and it can be hard to select high quality ones now. But I certainly think it's worth the investment because we know that the potential for learning is there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree. So just to move also now into, let's call it a closing phase of this podcast. We talked about so many great stuff. And now we talked about a lot of innovation and media, and especially in the context of education. So from your point of view, we all know that we are currently maybe the living part of humanity that is experiencing a huge change with technology. We all know the buzzword of artificial intelligence. So how do you see artificial intelligence having an impact on everything that we have done in the last 20, 30 years, in the next couple of years? So, and what are your trends and what are you personally most excited about?
Yeah, in terms of artificial intelligence, what I'm excited about in terms of artificial intelligence is its ability to support parents and educators in providing high quality support to young children, whether it's helping teachers to improve their practice, select appropriate materials, personalize instruction for students, whether it's helping parents to select videos that are more in line with their values or games that are more in line with their values, or to have conversations with kids about the media they're engaging in without the parent having to watch every episode themselves. I think creating a more connected world by removing some of the drudgery of teaching and parenting is a tremendous gift of AI that I hope is realized in the next 5 years.
Oh, I love this. I really love this. You know, just to make a final statement from myself, I think there is also a very interesting study about kids saying that kids nowadays feel very lonely. And I mean, there are a lot of reasons for it. I mean, kids are not engaging in physical life like we maybe did. I remember my childhood where we spent a lot of time outside. Nowadays it's different. So you need to push your kids out of the house to get them somehow outside. At the same time, also just demographical things changed. I mean, you do a lot of one-child households, so no siblings. And also, I mean, just the fact that many people left hometowns for career and this global new world where you can live everywhere and work from everywhere also disconnected a bit the demographical layers of families. So there are so many families that don't have these kind of grandparents around the corner, which was the case a couple of generations, which was something like the new normal, the normality a couple of generations before us, so that you have grandparents and even grandparents just in the same little village. So all these things are somehow connected to the fact that kids feel very alone nowadays. And I think that technology can bridge the gap here. And should maybe even bridge the gap so that it's not just about consumption, but also about interaction, about creating this kind of interactive experience where, I don't know, if you watch a video an educational video, that you would have maybe even the chance to have these kind of technology friends to ask him, hey, what do you think about ABC, and getting some kind of response and feedback. Do you think that this could be the case in a very close future for us?
Of course, media can support connection in a variety of ways, right? We have studies showing how it supports connection by video chatting with grandparents, for example. But I also think media can reveal something more fundamental about children. I think that even though the technological landscape has changed, kids are fundamentally the same. They might be using technology now to express the same needs and interests they would have expressed in different ways before. We can really look into how they use technology as a clue to how we can make our kids more connected. If we see that our kids are watching dance videos all the time, can we enroll them in dance classes or get them together with friends to practice dance? If we see that our kids are going on fantastical quests in their games and technology, can we get them in a Dungeons and Dragons group? I think that there are so many ways that media can show us who our children are. We can pick up those signals and then help our kids to explore those interests and become who they're going to be in the physical world as well.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Very beautiful. Thanks for your feedback. Now, last question, and I would say let's summarize for today. Should parents stop or try to block kids from access of technologies? I'm asking because I'm currently experiencing in a couple of countries in Europe, we are experiencing a trend in a direction that parents are getting more and more, let's call it reserved around technology. There is very often the direct feedback, oh no, again, a new application, again, a new streaming service, again, screen time. So what do you think about this trend? Should parents become something like a Chinese wall between technology and their kids?
This is a really difficult question. It's so personal for every family. I would never tell parents that they should cut off all technology or should use technology in any given amount, because I think families know for themselves. But here's what I would say. If you notice that your child is struggling in some area, you're worried about their behavior, their well-being, their grades, and you think that technology might be a factor, it's very trendy on social media to say, do a technology detox, no technology at all, take it all away. I don't think you have to go that far. And I'm not sure that going that far is going to give you the effects you want or teach your child what you want them to learn about their media use. I think a better approach is to really take a look at how technology is used throughout your day and in your family. Where is it productive for your child? Where is it helping to meet their needs, whether it is for social interaction, like you talked about, Nevio? And where is it maybe taking up time that your child could be spending doing something that's even more productive? If you can take a little bit more of an analytical lens and try to ease up on the media use where it's not helping while keeping it where it is helping, I think that you may end up with a balance that's more sustainable for your family.
I would even say we don't need to summarize, because you perfectly summarized all of these things now in your answer, which is perfect, Claire. I really enjoyed you having you today with us here at the Parents Are Chameleons podcast. I'm quite sure that there is a big opportunity for all of us in the next years, and there is a lot of movement. It's great to know that we have such smart people working on the forefront of these technologies and studies and doing a lot of great research. Keep us posted about everything, especially myself. I'm very curious to learn more in your area. And again, from my side, it was really a pleasure to talk to you and have you as a guest in our show today.
It was great speaking with you as well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Claire.